Let's take a look at the files on Z and see what we've got. This is kind of like a high-level view of what FOCUS and WebFOCUS files are from the point of view of the system. In the FOCUS world and the WebFOCUS world, the files are pretty much the same, and it's important to have an understanding of what they are. Now, FOCUS has been delivered, as you may not be aware. FOCUS is currently available from the 708R release, which was delivered about 24 years ago, to the 9.2.3 release, which was delivered 2 weeks ago or a week ago, right? Now, there's some differences, but for the most part, there's an enormous amount of common. There are 3 basic versions. The 708R through 7613 was a PDS version only. 707, 703, and 7706 was delivered as a PDS version. It's a partition data set, along with some aliases, and we'll talk about why we did that. FOCUS 7709 and up is our 64-bit version of FOCUS, which is one of the few products that's full 64-bit now on the mainframe. It is a PDSE. It's delivered as PDSE. It's an extended PDS, which means it's a lot easier to manage, along with some aliases. So let's take a look what that means. 708R, 7613 included these basic data sets. All right, if you looked at FOCUS, this is what you'd see. The data sets would have these names. There would also be a number of data sets that were specific to the interfaces that we give you, all right? And they would also be delimited. In 7703 and above, we have changed the way that we work. We now deliver physical files that are different. As a matter of fact, the physical files that we deliver for 7703 all the way up to 9.2 are the same. We have a whole lot of f.home files, 8 of them, and we have 6 conf files that are delivered. That's really all that's there. Now, what happened to all of those other files? There are 26 logical aliases that we use to mimic the older structures so that people working with older structures don't have to worry about, oh, all of that JCL I had running or set up, and all the custom user code and the applications that I set up using those old names. Well, you don't have to worry about them because the aliases at the system level, which we give you, will allow you to run your older code. And that was actually one of the most important things that we needed to do. We needed to maintain JCL compatibility with existing product installations. This is something that IBM does. This is something that we continue to do. All right. It also simplifies the installation. A whole lot fewer files are actually being moved. Creating the alias is relatively simple. This also allowed us to align FOCUS and WebFOCUS products, okay? Common engines with common features. That actually means that FOCUS ends up getting more features automatically from WebFOCUS. Some of the functionality that's available in FOCUS is now available on the WebFOCUS side, and specifically the modify CRT form and that whole area. The interactive stuff is now available over there. This also existed as part of our full upgrade to a full 64-bit product. LE, language environment. IBM has a language environment which enforces very strict coding conventions, and it's a beautiful thing because it allows it creates compatibility issues. It gets rid of problems that we used to have when we used to have code that was built in Fortran and built in C, built in COBOL, built in PL1. It used to be an assembler. It used to be a nightmare. It's a huge problem still, but it's no longer the nightmare because the LE, the language environment, basically has a set of rules now that enforce compliance that we have to comply with, so that anytime anybody uses the code in any of these other languages, the codes can intermix without difficulty. That's a big thing. We've also moved into the PDSE, the extended PDS data sets, for a very simple reason. It's a lot easier to manage. Okay, partition data sets are still out there. IBM has been trying to push people into PDSEs for a long time. We're now basically doing the same thing. It's just easier to manage. You don't have to worry about Compressing, you don't have to, it's a lot of issues that you don't have to worry about anymore with respect to the management of the file. And that consequently, we did that. Now, when you put focus on the system, what does it look like? Well, let's take a look at the files. Let's take a look at the interface and the adapter files. There are load files. These are the runnable code files. All of this is going to be in f.home.load. All right, whether it's an interface or it's an or part of the core product, this is now going to live in the load load file. Right, it's very simple. Now, there's also data files associated with most of the interfaces. All right, and these are support. These are generally there for support, and this could be linkage stuff that we would provide. It might be additional code that's required to link or to bind an adapter. There may be folk execs in there to provide language to development of, for instance, master files. We used to actually gen these interfaces on site, and that would be part of the installation process, and it was complicated. That's because we didn't really know always what we were going to run into. We no longer do these gens on site anymore. We now provide the finished product so that you don't have to worry about doing gens on site. The FOCLib.load is all of the runnable focus code that's stored in f.home.load. FuseLib.load and FuseLib.data are originally for the subroutines. They're not really used anymore. We will put samples of runnable code over there. We will put help files for the user-written subroutines over there. All of the user-written subroutines, which were kept separate, are now included as part of FOCLib. User can put stuff in here if he wants to. Errors.data. Errors.data and ErrorNLS, which is our international version, is the storage place for all of the focus error messages, right? And as such, you can't start the product without having a DD pointing at this. The focus error messages have to be there. They can be changed and they can be translated. You might have your site, if you're in France or in Germany, you may have a whole set of files that begin with the language name FRE or GER that indicate that these are translated files for focus, and they're translated. They're the same error messages. We store severity for the error messages in as part of the message, as part of the error message itself. And these can be changed. All right, so you actually have some flexibility here. There's things that we have 3 levels: in info, warning, and error. And typically with error, we stop. Typically with warning, we don't. Info, we don't. If you want to change something, you actually can go in and adjust the specific error message and change the level of severity so that your site has different usage. The master files are critical. FOCUS works with metadata describing other data, and that metadata is common, right, across all other data tools. You can create these by hand. You can use an auto tool. You can use create synonym. Basically, whatever you create is going to be allocated to DD name master, and it's going to be allocated to DD name master, giving it access. These tools, once you can have multiple libraries concatenated underneath DD name. We will use the first one that we find, so be a little bit careful. Master files contain focus DBA, really critical stuff. This gives you control in the file down to the field value level, right? And that's actually pretty important. Now, the master file can also contain pretty much everything but the kitchen sink. Now, what do I mean? It has metadata about fields, segments, joins, clusters, virtual fields, defines and computes, filters, where and where total, sort objects, bys and acrosses, style objects, focus style, join, cross-reference segments. What else do we have? Pretty much all of these things can be stored in a master file, which in the WebFOCUS world is great because it means that you can access it from the front-end tool through the object inspector, which means that you can see it and pick it. very easily, which makes life much easier for you guys. Part of the great strength. We also have access.data, which is basically going to provide access files. These are typically files that contain information about the data files that we're working with. They're associated primarily with master files, part of the synonym. And they will contain connection strings. They might contain information about external indexes and MDI indexes for focus files. If there is field renaming for long field names going on, it could be stored here. It's going to be required for all data interfaces except focus and xFocus and flat files. Right? Focus and xFocus can use them, not necessary. You can create them manually with an auto tool or using create synonym. FOCUS are the guts of Focus. This is what we do. All right. This is what is actually being generated when you're sitting on the front end of Designer. You're building a FOCUS that's going to be passed to the back end and run. All right. And you're building it with a GUI front end. The FOCUS contain the Focus code that's going to be processed, all right, by the Focus engine. And go, come on, don't get lost. All right, it's an interpreted language. It's editable in ISPF on the mainframe, or in Focus. You can use TED or iEdit if you have that installed. It's allocated to DD name FOCUS, and you can have multiples underneath that DD name. Be careful. We will use the first one we find. All right, so it's important to understand what the sequence is of your concatenation there. Okay, Focus code includes system level operations like allocation, concatenation, copy, deletion, all kinds of good things. In other words, Focus can talk to the operating system can talk to Focus, right? So you have the ability, you don't necessarily have to drop out of Focus in order to do something at an operating system level. You can do it directly from within. The major language areas inside of Focus include table, join, match, which are primarily reporting, graph, which is charting, dialog manager, which is our proc language, modify and maintain, which is transaction processing. We have also a windowing functionality inside of Focus. Focus window files are stored as TRF or FMU.data files that you'll see out on the system if you've got them. FMU files, the TRF files are pure alpha. They're used for transfer. They can be compiled into an FMU file for faster loading and running. And basically the window command, this Focus window command is available as a stackable command or as an immediate dialog manager executable command. There are a standard number of windows that are available to you when you're building with Focus windows. Remember, this goes back to, if you remember Windows 3 and the SDK, this is what this was really all about. That goes way back. The last thing I want to talk about are the conf files. Conf files are our configuration files. They exist in the Focus products in 7703 and above. Everything is conf dot, and you'll find them there. There's a .data file, which includes a lot of really important stuff. Things like alias. Alias is a JCL that we create on your site to recreate your Focus aliases. So if you lose one, you can get it back real easy. Focus and Focus C are JCL and C lists created with your specific system in mind so that you can immediately run Focus either as a batch job, JCL, or as a C list, right? There's a generic job card that we build for your system. DB2 bind procedures and files are stored in here. There's also the iSetup JCL that was used to install the product. When you install Focus, we write JCL on the fly to install the product. That's stored here in conf.data. So if you need to find it, conf.dsn, del list basically are lists of the files that we have put on your system so that you can either in the conf directory or in the regular directory, so that if you need to remove them, you can do that very easily. There's a list of files here. You can do whatever you need. You want to copy them? Here. Here's a list automatically. You don't have to go crazy. Conf.cfg includes a number of things. One really important one is the $rel DDS. This contains an internal concatenation that we use for the errors file. And consequently, if you move stuff around, if you move from one system to another, you need to make sure that this $rel DDS is correct. You need to go in and edit it and make sure that it's pointing at the correct at DSNs that are current to your system. All right. There's a font user utility here, which is also really useful because it allows you to add fonts on the Z, and that includes TrueType fonts. Last, but not least, conf.prf contains the edasprof.prf file, which is the typical WebFOCUS system profile, which FOCUS also uses. All right, and that's it.